When Yasmin Khan awoke, she was met with such darkness that she was unsure if she'd opened her eyes at all. She was awake, upright, moving cautiously forward, and yet the darkness remained, endless, impenetrable. Perhaps she was in her bedroom, aboard the TARDIS. Perhaps the Doctor had caused a fault in the systems of her impossible ship and all the lights had gone out. Logical, but logic didn't hold back the fear that grew inside her. She didn't remember going to sleep. Fumbling, Yaz reached out for something, anything. Her hands found a hard wall, and something, a piece of string maybe, tickled her face. For a few urgent seconds her fingers groped awkwardly, and then she found the string again, grabbed it and yanked it down. A light bulb pinged into life, and Yaz saw that she was not alone. In the far corner a statue stood, with terrifying clarity. A weeping angel in the form of the Doctor, casting cruel shadows in the angles of the room, an echo of the time in Mediton just before she and the Doctor had been separated. Her heart raced, looking for an exit, a door just to her left, forced her to avert her gaze just for a split second, just long enough. When she looked back, the angel had moved closer. It was stalking her. "You can't be here. You're just a memory. Nothing more." All she had to do was wake up, Yaz told herself. She would find herself in her bedroom in that impossible ship, and the impossible alien in charge of it all would greet her with a smile. Pinching herself didn't work. Shouting out loud that "this isn't real" had no effect. Stone fingers over its face, the angel lingered, patiently awaiting Yaz's next mistake, and she wondered, if the angel moved its hands, would the Doctor's stony features be strangely serene? Or would a snarl be etched onto its face, the last thing Yaz ever saw? Slowly, not blinking, not even for a second, Yaz backed towards the door she'd spotted a moment earlier, her eyes locked onto the impossible creature, keeping it there by the simple act of observation. Time lengthened. Her journey towards the door stretched into forever. The angel waited. Where was the door? Without thinking, Yaz turned. Only for a fraction of a second. No time at all. Just enough to find the door, locate its handle and turn back. The angel was standing right in front of her, close enough to touch. Its hands were no longer covering its face. Instead, they were outstretched above its head, claws frozen in the act of slashing down. Yaz gasped. Sweat dripped from her brow, pooled in her eyes. Her hand slapped the door at her back, groping for the handle. Don't blink. Whatever you do, don't. But then, why not? Might that free her from the nightmare? Maybe it was the only way to wake up. Maybe it would ensure that she never woke up at all. What would the Doctor do? It didn't matter. The Doctor was here, right now, in front of her. The Doctor was the angel. The brilliant, bright teeth she was used to seeing had been sharpened into fangs. The laughter lines around her nose were cracks in the stonework. And worst of all, the Doctor's dazzling green eyes were cold grey orbs, devoid of warmth and laughter. Let it go. Yaz clamped her eyes shut. It was easier than she'd imagined, a relief even. This time, she felt the whoosh of movement from the angel, as if the creature wanted her to know what was happening, to extend her fear. She also felt the door handle nudge the small of her back. Cold terror gripped her. She reached round and grasped it, twisted, pushed, turned and fell. Was it too late? Yaz felt herself falling forward, slipping into eternity, and then she hit the ground hard. Yaz didn't know much about quantum science, the almost counterintuitive laws of which governed the Weeping Angel's strange behaviour, but the Doctor had told her that probability played a big part in it. Right now, as she lay, eyes closed, breathing rapidly, Yaz surmised there was a strong probability that the angel had taken her and cast her back into an alien past. But there was also a probability that she had managed to open the door and escape the monster's clutches. There was only one way to be certain, to lock in the truth of it and determine which probability had won out. Slowly, Yaz opened her eyes. She was in a dark, carpeted corridor, and the angel had gone. Dan Lewis walked along a hallway lined with tall windows and dimly lit with low-powered electric candelabra. He had no idea how he'd got here. He'd learned it was best not to ask questions when things got weird because the answers usually left his head spinning. So until he got a better offer, he reckoned he might as well carry on walking. Plus, he was hungry. And clearly he was on an upper floor in some big posh house, which had to mean that somewhere there was a big posh kitchen stacked with plates of posh food. Posh nosh. The rain hammering at the windows wasn't helping the unease that gnawed at him as much as his hunger, and it didn't feel as if this creaky old house was entirely as empty as it seemed. Hello? Nothing. But if two identical twins rode past on little bikes right now, singing a quiet playground ditty, then he wouldn't have been surprised. Yaz? Doctor? Still nothing but the echoes of his own voice bouncing off the high ceiling. Why do you always get me into positions like this? They never take me anywhere pleasant, like a spa weekend. Then again, if he did, he'd probably find the one spot in the universe where the cucumber slices was out to kill me. The corridor bent round to his right, and Dan came to a slow stop. He may have had a reputation for it, but he wasn't an idiot. And although he preferred a good comedy, he did have some faint knowledge of horror movie tropes, even if most of them came from hours watching Scooby-Doo as a kid. There was something around the corner, wasn't there? A ghost, a ghoul, a chainsaw-wielding madman. It was always the way when the Scooby Gang split up and Shaggy went off to look for food. Oh, I don't want to be Shaggy. Don't let me be Shaggy. Someone was definitely lurking around the bend. He could sense it. Scouse sense. Dan balled his fists at his side. He didn't think of himself as a violent man, but if he had to punch out some janitor on the take who was dressed up as the thing from Scream, then he had to come across as even more scary. And he reckoned there was nothing scarier than a Scouse bloke coming at you with his fists flying, even if it was just for show. Quickly, he jumped around the corner, just like Bruce Lee. Come on, then! There was someone, a tall, bear-like figure hulking in the gloom down the far end, where the light didn't quite seem to reach. The figure was covered in fur and wearing space armor. Dan relaxed, delighted that his old mate was here, ready for a wind-up to ease the tension he'd been feeling since he got here. And maybe Carvanista had some answers? Scooby, he called out. What are you doing here, mate? Carvanista spun round, bringing a giant paw to his chest. You need to leave, Carvanista barked. The frown that had been etched onto Dan's brow since joining the TARDIS grew deeper, but he didn't back away. You haven't changed, have you? So come on, what have I done to upset you this time? You should be happy to see me. Dan, I'm warning you, you need to get out of here, now, while you still have the chance. Is someone threatening you? Are you threatening me? I'm trying to protect you, you idiot. It's my job, remember? Protect me from what? From me. Okay, you're officially scaring me now. Is this some sort of prank? Did Yaz put you up to this? Carvanista was standing by one of the windows. The rain had stopped, and outside the ragged clouds split open to reveal a stunningly bright, oversized moon. The Lupar let out a howl that reverberated around the corridor. Dan was about to say it was a good job they weren't in London, but his words died in his throat as something unspeakable happened. Carvanista's limbs cracked horribly. The angles of his bones changed, audibly snapping into impossible dimensions, too quickly to fathom, too quickly for Dan to figure out how he could help. His paws stretched out, becoming elongated talons the size of kitchen knives. Muscles flowed, rippling under the fur, moving as though they were being broken down and remade, redistributed. Energized as though by some primeval infection, before Dan's very eyes, his friend transformed into something he could scarcely believe. The face was the worst. Carvanista's little wet nose swelled and stretched outwards into an ugly, bony muzzle. Thin black lips peeled back to reveal a maw dripping with saliva, rimmed with yellow fangs that grew longer in seconds. The golden eyes that normally conveyed the Lupar's hidden emotions blackened instantly. And, if it were possible, he was even taller. Carvanista's massive arched shoulder blades knocked into the ceiling as he drew himself up, dislodging chunks of plaster and stone. On shaky legs, Dan edged backwards, eyes wide. You're a werewolf! The Carvanista's front paws dug into the floor, tearing up curls of broken wood with the merest flecks of its talons. The giant elongated head snapped round at Dan, and it snarled hungrily. "Oh yeah, you kept this to yourself, didn't you?" The creature tensed, and a blood-curdling growl thundered from its throat. Dan didn't hang around. He turned, he ran, and if a prank was being pulled, then the video of his screams was going to be a certified hit on YouTube. The screaming woke her up. For the doctor, finding herself on the floor wasn't uncommon. She was always having quick power naps and awaking in unusual places. Still, she would definitely remembered slumbering in an ominous cobwebbed mansion with a soundtrack of terrified yelling as her alarm clock. "Dan?" She listened, discerning a definite scouse twang to the screams. So where were they coming from? She spun on her heel and ran into what looked like an entrance hall designed by a student of MC Isha. Too many stairs, black and white geometric tiling on the floor, and a penchant for over-designed candelabra stuck on wood-panelled walls that no doubt masked many hidden dimensions and secret passageways. The screams had faded, and there was no telling where in this mad geometry they'd come from. Experience told her it was best not to run blindly into a space-time spiderweb. Dan was a big guy, and he could look after himself for a bit. Probably. Still, an investigation was tempting. Someone had clearly gone to some trouble. "Start with the doors," the doctor told herself. "You can tell a lot from someone's front door." She walked up to a wide arched vestibule into which a carved wooden door had been set. The handle was massive, black cast iron. It looked complex, and it wasn't moving. Locked. Yeah, that tells me something. Into the trap then, which probably wasn't a bad thing. Like any web, even one woven from the fabric of time and space, the spider was never too far away. All she had to do to get its attention was pluck at a couple of strands. So the doctor headed deeper into the house, occasionally brushing a finger along a surface to see how far down into the detail the pattern descended. Impressive. The resolution was super high, which meant someone really had gone to a lot of trouble. The drawing room was empty. Its view of the land outside was obscured by curtains, and every time she pulled them back a new set would appear, making it clear that whatever force was in play, it didn't want her finding out the truth of the place just yet. "Clever spider," she muttered. Many doors led away from the drawing room, and she could see already that the door she'd entered it by wasn't going to take her back. She chose another instead, testing the pattern further, because it wasn't random. Nothing ever was. Random just meant you didn't know the rules of cause and effect yet. Music played from somewhere. She decided not to follow it, but whichever direction she took, the music grew louder, closer. Definitely not random, definitely a trap. The doctor came to a stop. Hanging back by a lacquered doorframe, she peered into a room full of old instruments. A young girl wearing a golden dress, at odds with the gloom of the place, sat playing a piano. "Hello? What's your name?" If the girl had heard the question, she gave no answer. Instead, she focused on playing her tune. "Are your parents around?" the doctor asked, still hoping to make a breakthrough. "Is there someone looking after you?" The chimes of the piano keys stopped. The girl vanished. The thought of her companions was enough of a reason for the doctor to leave the music room. If she had been abducted here, then it was likely that Yaz and Dan had too. "Did you recognize her?" said a voice, suddenly, unexpectedly. She was back at the entrance hall, where a man in a fine suit lounged on the staircase. His smile was that of a Cheshire cat. "So," the doctor said, "the spider shows himself." The Dream Lord hadn't changed in appearance since their previous battle, but she supposed there was no need for him to. As much as her face might have altered over the years, her demons remained the same. "Did you recognize her?" said a voice, suddenly and unexpectedly. The doctor was back at the entrance hall, where a man in a fine suit lounged on the staircase. His smile was that of a Cheshire cat. "So," the doctor said, "the spider shows himself." The Dream Lord hadn't changed in appearance since their previous battle, but she supposed there was no need for him to. As much as her face might have altered over the years, her demons remained the same. "You don't sound pleased to see me. I'm disappointed." "What are you doing here? How are you here? I got rid of you. I made sure of that." "Please," he rolled his eyes. "I never left. You know that. I've been waiting in the wings, so to speak, always lingering behind your shoulder, hiding away in the corner of your eye, biding my time, Doctor, until the opportune moment. Yeah, putting this place together." The Dream Lord used the railings to pull himself into a standing position. Almost dancing down the steps, he came to stand right in front of the Doctor. "From your tone, I'd hazard a guess that you're not appreciative of my craft, Doctor." "Are you going to explain what it is? Because I know how much you love a monologue. As much as you love them too." "Get on with it then. Why am I here? What do you want?" No, Doctor. I've brought you to a realm of your worst fears, a place where hope dies and love remains forever blind. But it pales in comparison to what resides in your head, doesn't it? Seriously, this your big plan? A haunted house? This is really your best? I'll give you 1 out of 10 for effort, and that's only because I'm in a good mood. The Dream Lord's smile dropped. "You know, the last time we did battle, I was too kind. That's the realization I came to. I was the Dream Lord. I gave you and your friends everything you and they ever wanted, wrapped up with a little bow. I wasn't even asking to be thanked. But you took my gift, Doctor, and you threw it right back at me. I mean, how ungrateful can you get? You tormented us." "No, Doctor. I offered you and your friends a choice. You could live your lives in ignorance, perfectly content and peaceful, or you could continue falling down the rabbit hole, one you'd never escape from." The Doctor wasn't having this. "Did you expect us to happily accept your dominion?" "Yeah, maybe that was a stretch. But how are Amy and Rory these days, The Doctor scowled. "I'd warn you to keep their names out of your mouth." The Dream Lord was unfazed by her threat. "Oh, that's it. Well, they died. They died because of you. Well, imagine if you just embraced the dream life, they'd still be alive today." "Is this going somewhere? Only I've got places to be." "No, let's play the game, Doctor. You're not going anywhere anytime soon, so let's enjoy ourselves. My work, it's a fine art when done properly." "What do you want?" "Is it too simple to say that I want to punish you? I suppose it's succinct. It gets to the point, like you just wished for. I want you to suffer, Doctor." And there was me thinking we'd go for a game of Ludo or Snakes and Ladders. The Dream Lord smiled, but there was no humour in the movement. "I've had centuries to contemplate what I'd do to you if I got a second chance, Doctor." "Yeah, that's a lot of Ludo. It's a lot of ladders." "Oh, the ladders were very good to me. I reached the top of my game very quickly, Doctor. And when I did, I saw the revelation that presenting you with dreams wasn't enough. If I have the capacity to warp reality, then let's try a different board, I thought. You have to keep things fresh, after all, to feel alive, truly alive. You know me as the Dream Lord, Doctor, but I've rebranded. You can call me the Lord of Nightmares." "Lord of Nightmares. Ha! It's a work in progress. But as all the great marketing minds will know, clarity and truth is key. Just tell it like it is." "How clever." The Doctor couldn't hide her sarcasm. "Oh, it is very clever. I'm going to show you your greatest fear. More than that, I'm going to let it destroy you and your friends. I'm going to tear your hope down in front of your eyes and watch you suffer. Fear is a superpower. Didn't you say that once, Doctor? Well, it follows then that fear is also a super weapon when held in the right pair of hands." The Doctor shook her head. She knew that she was going about things in the worst possible fashion. The Dream Lord's attack was through the power of speech. He had a subtle way of subduing his victims just by wrapping them in words. It was very similar to what she did, in truth, when she would talk her way out of tight spots. By listening to him, she was handing him the power and authority he craved. By listening to him, it gave him the time to grow more powerful. Still, some people talked too much. "You don't get it," she said. "I know how to stop you. These tricks won't work. You and me, we've got previous. And I beat you. The Dream Lord, aka the Lord of Nightmares, rolled his eyes. "Oh, right! Oh, yes, of course! You'll just kill yourself again to escape, right? Like I'd let that happen, Doctor. No, I'm afraid you're trapped here. You're overestimating your power. And you're underestimating just how weak you are when it comes to your friends. Or have you forgotten about them? How strong are they, Doctor? How far can they go in a realm which makes their nightmares a reality? If you harm a hair on their heads..." "But that's the brilliant thing," the Dream Lord declared. "My brand new USP. I don't have to lay a hand on them at all. Their own nightmares will do all the work for me. Honestly, my hands are tied in all this." He checked his fingernails studiously. "I'm just a bystander. I'll save them." "And I truly believe that you believe that, but your confidence stems from an awareness and control of sense and logic. So ask yourself this: do things always happen sensibly and logically in nightmares? Do you ever have any control over the terrors that scream at you from under your bed? Well, there's only one way to find out. I'll find my friends, and when I find them, I'll come back and I'll find you, and I will make you regret every single second of every single century you spent spinning this web. Oh, look out! It's the oncoming storm." The Doctor stared at him, unblinking. "I don't have time for this," she said, and then she turned and headed back into the dimensions of the house, determined to find her friends. "Before you go," the Dream Lord called after her, "my question, remember? The one you didn't answer." The Doctor didn't break her stride. "The first thing I said to you, I asked, did you recognize her? The girl in the room, the one you tried walking away from. There's lots to unpack there, by the way." "I know who she is," the Doctor growled, face forward one step after the other. "Sad, lonely child, abandoned, left on the steps of a whole new universe by someone who never..." "Oh, shut up." The Doctor marched up to a pair of large double doors, and she flung them open. She stepped through and then closed them behind her. She leaned back against them, gathering her thoughts. The Dream Lord, then, or whatever he was calling himself, well, she supposed that was something. The Doctor looked around at her new surroundings. She was in a library, a big dusty library full of old books, with ladders for the ones stacked out of reach. There was even a giant old globe made of blue crystal on a table, and sat at the table, on a chair lifted from Downton Abbey surplus, was a girl with her head bowed, her long dark hair covering her face entirely. The Doctor's heart kicked in unison as she started forward. "Yes?" But as the Doctor crouched down in front of the woman and placed a gentle hand upon her shoulder, she realized that something was wrong. Yaz's body was cold to the touch. Anger and grief swelled inside her. Not again. Not Yaz. The Doctor slowly placed her fingers under Yaz's chin to lift her head. The face was sickly grey, with patches of skin peeling away from the flesh beneath. Those eyes, normally so dazzling and curious, were dull and milky. The teeth were discoloured, and some of them were missing. The Doctor felt numb. She barely registered that her legs had given way and she was on the floor, both her hearts beating rampantly. No, this isn't real. This can't be real. The disfigured version of Yaz shifted. With a horrific, unnatural motion, it pushed down on its quivering, broken legs and stood, holding onto the edge of the table with brittle, gnarled fingers. What was it the Dream Lord had said about nonsense and logic? What had he said about control? "You're not Yaz." The Doctor willed herself onto her feet to get back in control. "You're just a nightmare, and I'm going to wake up any second." But she knew it wouldn't be that easy. Not here. Here, the Dream Lord's control was absolute. The nightmare corpse of Yasmin Khan turned its fragile head to face the Doctor, who caught her breath. So, what was going to happen now? The Doctor wondered. Whatever the nature of the web the Dream Lord had spun, whatever game he was playing, this was a whole new level of cruel. Despite her flippancy at their meeting, she knew how deadly he could be, and she'd known also that the terror he'd instilled in herself and Amy and Rory, untold years ago, had nicked only the merest surface of his power. They'd been lucky to survive that encounter, gambling on victory with their own lives as the dice. In his own words, the Dream Lord had been planning this one for centuries. So just how much had he learned since then? By how much had his power grown? Then, suddenly, horribly, the corpse of Yasmin Khan opened its mouth. I waited for you. I waited, but you never came back.
Help! Somebody! Doctor! Yaz!
Now that, thought Yaz, was 100% Dan. His particular blend of panic and desperation was unmistakable. And sure, he was screaming in terror, but the sound of his voice lifted her heart. Her own fears about the angel doctor were pushed to one side, and now, fueled with a renewed sense of purpose, Yaz scrabbled to her feet and charged down the corridor.
Yaz! Doctor! Seriously now!
Dan, hold on now! Yaz scurried around a corner and just about stopped herself running into a wall, a dead end. No Dan Lewis, just a standard brick wall. Here! What? Turning, Yaz looked for anything she could have missed, like a door. In her haste, she could easily have whizzed past a partially hidden entrance, but a quick recce back a few meters revealed an absence of doors. Visible ones, at least. Isn't it funny? She spun around. Who said that? Felt as though the voice had come from a spot right next to her, as if someone had been whispering in her ear. Right now, in this very building, there's a life or death chase going on. But no matter how close you get to helping your friend, you'll always discover that he's out of reach. Don't you think it's funny how a building can be so perplexing? During one of her spins, a man appeared. He was leaning against the dead-end wall. He wore a dark green velvet jacket with matching pants, a deep purple waistcoat with golden swirls which seemed to move, slowly spinning like galaxies, and a loose cravat of the same design. Who are you supposed to be? She asked. She hated how frail her voice sounded. You could call me a friend of the doctor's, if I was a friend of the doctor's. She narrowed her eyes. An enemy, then? The man waved a dismissive hand. Friend, enemy, they're not as deeply opposed as you might think, especially when it comes to her. Are you behind all this? Your mind is behind all this, if you want to get technical. My mind. So, what about Dan? Is he all right? What are you doing to him? The grinning frenemies expression hardened just for a moment. I just told you that I'm not responsible. I don't like it when I have to repeat myself. Okay. Damage control, she told herself. Let's try another track. What is Dan's mind doing to him? She asked. You're assuming he's here. You're assuming you're not all alone in this big scary house. Yaz knew that. She just didn't want to lose the hope that had surged inside her when she'd heard the scream of her friend. Still, the man smiled again. That's better. You're a quick learner, Yasmin Khan. I can see why the doctor likes you so much. Yaz fought down her fear and grinned just like the man, mirroring his expression, his tone and his attitude. Established empathy and rapport. Hours of police training workshops came back to her. So, you'll answer my question? Of course. I mean, you can't help him, but I appreciate your querulous curiosity, Yaz. Your friend is right now being tormented by horrors that are, shudder, quite indescribable. But I don't think you're too surprised by that, are you? After all, you've been going through exactly the same thing. Did you just say shudder? I did. Yaz smiled further. I'm guessing that's the purpose of this place, right? Behind every door is another nightmare. You don't sound scared. I'm literally terrified, but I won't give you the satisfaction of showing that. Oh, brave girl, I'm impressed. The doctor would be impressed, I'm sure. Is she okay? Or what do you think? I think she's okay. The doctor always finds a way to win. Yeah, is that what she tells you? It's what I've seen. It's what I know. Ah, but what about what you haven't seen and what you don't know? How many battles has she had to walk away from? How many loves has she lost in all the days you didn't know her? We all have our dark days, Yasmin Khan, and the doctor has had more than you can possibly know. The doctor always wins, no matter the dark days. The doctor wins despite them. She doesn't always win, and she's not going to win today. He seemed annoyed by his outburst. He gathered himself together and continued. Interesting, thought Yaz. The doctor doesn't always come back. You've seen that for yourself, haven't you? As many fears as you possess, the greatest one of all is the thought of her never returning. Isn't that why you saw the angel? The doctor isn't infallible. Oh, she left you for 3 years. She left you for 10 months before that. Can you see a pattern here? Each gap gets longer. And who knows? Maybe next time it'll stretch beyond your measly human lifespan. I know what you're doing, do you? You're not exactly hiding it. I'd see no reason to. I think the only power you have is through words. His eyes flashed dangerously. You've already witnessed that isn't true. You've seen what I've made. I thought you said that was all because of my mind. Oh, he grinned. And surprisingly, there seemed to be a genuine level of enjoyment in the expression. Oh, yes. You got me there. Good work. Gold star. Yaz must have flinched because his smile grew larger. Oh, isn't that how the doctor rewards you? Meaningless rewards for getting things right, like a pet getting treats for doing clever tricks. It's an inside joke. Oh, and now you're wondering how I could possibly know about an inside joke. You should be scared, but not of me, not of silly old me. I'm here to help you, Yaz. I'm here to show you your greatest weaknesses, and through that, you can grow as a person. You can better yourself. So you should be thanking me, in all honesty. I've done enough growing, thank you very much. Now will you tell me what you've done with the doctor? You pouted. So much concern for her in that tiny heart of yours. It is a problem, isn't it? She instilled a passion for life within you, but she has the capacity to take it away in an instant. You know that you need her more than she needs you, and you're constantly living in fear that you will let her down and give her reason to cast you aside. She'd say it herself that I could never do that. Empty words to keep the pressure weighing too much on your shoulders. You sound so certain. With a quick step, the man moved to stand directly behind her. His chin was resting on her shoulder. She felt him grip her arms from behind, strong and tight, and then he turned her firmly around so that she was now facing down the length of a corridor that seemed to stretch towards a dark infinity. Should we say hello to some old acquaintances, Yaz? An angel was suddenly there. Not like it had just appeared, more like she had just seen it. And it was the same angel as before, except it had been joined by numerous others, all of them massing together like a frozen army. Some were posed with the doctor's features hidden behind their grey hands, others were positioned to strike. It doesn't make sense, does it? The man growled into her ear. There was only ever one instance of the doctor being transformed into a weeping angel, but if I'm allowed to hypothesize, I'd hazard a guess that each of these statues represents another instance of you failing the doctor, each one a probability curve leading towards abandonment. Times from the past and the future, it doesn't matter. You failed the doctor back then, unable to save her. You'll do it again. And why would someone as mighty and as brilliant as the doctor keep you around when you insist on making mistakes? When will her patience snap? And with his final word, he threw her forward into the army of angels. The doctor watched, fascinated and horrified by this corpse of Yaz, as it cocked its head to one side and looked right at her with its destroyed eyes. It spoke again. I waited. I ignored the others. They told me to move on. I told them you would return, but you didn't. I waited, and you left us. How long? Asked the doctor, wanting to test the truth of this ghastly vision. How long did you wait? A lifetime. All of it. I waited. The doctor lifted her head to the ceiling. All right. You win, Lord of Nightmares. You beat me. I give up. Now come on. Stop this. There was nothing. What? No manic laughter? No, I told you so. Not even a little gloat. The corpse of her friend was unnerving the doctor. It had to be an illusion, a lie, a nightmare cast into reality, spun from the same fabric as the house. She knew that this wasn't Yaz with as much certainty as she knew her own life, and she stopped herself right there. Everything you know is a lie. You did this to me, the corpse of Yaz continued, pushing, needling, piercing the doctor's heart. You said you'd come back. You promised. You lied. The doctor shook her head. I wouldn't do that. Not to you, Yaz. I waited for you. I died. I waited for you. I died. I waited for you. The words became a chant, escaping Yaz's broken lips. Over and over, the mantra was repeated, an echo circling the doctor's head, refusing to leave. Each time around, the words became louder, until none of her senses could comprehend anything else. All that she could think about was how she would take a misstep in the future and Yaz would die. It was the nightmare that tormented her waking thoughts more than any other. Doctor, are you there? Please tell me you're somewhere. A new voice broke through the tumult. The same voice, as much as it sounded so vastly different. The doctor clung onto the shouts as if they were a life raft, finally making the decision to leave the zombie Yaz behind. No words, no apology. This thing, as much as it was filled with the doctor's greatest fears concerning her friend, was not Yaz. She owed it nothing. She stood and quickly walked from the room, fixing on the voice belonging to what she dearly hoped was the real Yaz. Once free from the room's influence, the doctor spotted her. Yaz was in the hallway, evidently searching for her. She spun around, revealing her features. There was no damaged skin, fraying hair, or hollow eyes. The doctor's heart surged. Double the hope, double the love. She ran to her, properly ready to berate the girl for taking her time, but the sight of her and the swelling surge of emotion she felt stopped the words from forming. Yaz had seen her too, and the smile that burst into life on her face, which shone from her eyes, was enough for the doctor to know that this Yaz was the real Yaz, the one and only. Oof! Yaz threw herself at the doctor in a massive hug, pulling her tight. For once, it was just what the doctor needed. I could get used to this, Yaz murmured. It is you, isn't it? Asked the doctor. Yaz pulled back, and the doctor stared into her face. Yaz looked as though she was about to say something, but the doctor got there first. Dan! Where's Dan? Have you seen Dan? Don't worry, I know it is you. At least, I hope you... No, I know you're real. But where's Dan? Seriously, if you're here, then he probably is too. Come on, Yaz. We haven't got all day. Spit it out. I think he's here. The doctor realised that Yaz was looking her up and down. Don't worry. I'm really me too. And then Yaz peered over her shoulder, frowning into the library. Come on! The doctor steered her away. There's nothing in there but a load of old books and a globe of the planet Metabilis 3. Nothing interesting there either. Just spiders and a unicorn. At least I think it was a unicorn. A really angry unicorn. Do unicorns get angry? This one was fierce. Dan! I've been looking for him, Yaz said, as the doctor strode forward into the corridor. I keep hearing his voice, but it's like he's been kept at arm's length. That's what he said to me anyway. The doctor stopped and spun on her heel. He? He who? Who said what? Yaz grimaced. Oh, just this bloke. Thin air, mad suit. I think he created everything here. Seemed like he thought he was in charge anyway. That made sense, thought the doctor. The Dream Lord spoke to you. What did he say? Yaz was quiet. Yaz, snap to it. What did he say to you? Come on, you're no good to me if you don't. Nothing. Yaz snapped. Nothing, mimicked the doctor. Just nothing that made any sense. He was a gloater. He was gloating. Said he wanted to help me grow and be a better person. Pfft. Who was he? You said you knew him, but I thought he might have been lying. He calls himself the Dream Lord, or Lord of Nightmares. And did he? Did he what? Did he actually create all this? Of course he... Oh? There were times when Yaz's analytical clarity of mind delighted the doctor, and this was one of them. She spun and grabbed her by the arms. Top of the class, Yaz! Gold star! For some reason, Yaz didn't look impressed. The doctor guessed something had happened to her that she didn't want her to know about, which was annoying, but her question had triggered a thought she'd not considered until now. He says he made all this, the doctor said, releasing her friend, but now I'm not so sure. She walked along the corridor, testing handles on the doors they passed. There seemed to be a lot of them in this part of the house. So you're saying that maybe he's trapped in here as much as we are? She heard Yaz say. The doctor tugged at the handle of one particular door. It was a deep, dark blue with 6 square panels arranged in 2 columns of 3. The 4th panel high, and each column was made of frosted glass and barred with 1 horizontal and 2 vertical bars. Possibly. Doesn't make him any less dangerous, not if he's used to learn the power of the place to get what he wants. That looks like the TARDIS, Yaz said. So, what does he want? It looks like it, but I'm not putting any money on it leading to a way out of here, unless it is the TARDIS breaking through. Maybe it's trying to help us. Or what does he want? Or, the usual. I see. That bad, eh? Yeah, that bad. But he doesn't have any power over real life, the doctor said, spinning to face Yaz again. It's only in our heads. Our heads. Did he show you something too? He did, yeah. So what did he make you see? Should she tell her? Wondered the doctor. Would it change anything if she told Yaz her deepest fear? Doctor? Just stuff from inside my head. The Dream Lord likes to dig around, find something you fear, and then bring it to life around you. He probably did that to you too, but the thing about fear is that usually there's nothing behind it. Fears are usually about what we think might happen, or what we dread might happen, not what actually will happen, usually. I saw you. You were a weeping angel chasing after me. You might still be chasing after me for all I know. This Dream Lord made it so that there were loads of them. You, angels, if you hunted me down. He literally grabbed me and threw me into an army of them. Apparently that's my worst nightmare. I shouldn't be surprised. No idea how I made it out alive. Yaz was cut off by the sound of a strangled yell. A moment later, the fake TARDIS door exploded outwards. The doctor threw herself at Yaz and shoved her back as the door splintered and clattered in bits throughout the corridor. Someone landed on top of her, a dead weight shoving her into the carpet. Sorry! Dan? Doctor? You get off me now, Dan. Sorry. The weight on her back was released, and the doctor climbed up on her knees, combing dust and bits of wood from her hair. Dan's face was sweating, bright red. You look like you've been getting some exercise, the doctor said. Something throw you through that door? Yaz asked. Oh, that's not even the half of it, said Dan, and the doctor realised he was looking up and down the corridor and through the hole he'd just made in what had once been a familiar blue door. So what was it? Asked the doctor. You wouldn't believe me if I told you, he confessed, still shooting worried looks every which way as if his pursuer would show themselves at any moment. Oh, trust me, said Yaz. We're seeing plenty of weird things today. All right, it was Carvanista. Carvanista's here. Oh, he's here all right, but he... Dan paused, and the doctor saw him looking between herself and Yaz. Carvanista, but not Carvanista. Am I right? Yeah, you could say that. Are you two... Oh, we're real, interjected Yaz. Oh, good. And Carvanista, he's a werewolf? A werewolf! The doctor said it at the same time as Yaz, and both of them burst into laughter. Yaz was laughing so much that tears started rolling from her eyes. Why is that so funny? The thing you're most scared of, the thing that frightens you most of all, is Carvanista turning into a werewolf. You should have seen it. Yaz couldn't even speak. I don't see why that's so funny. The doctor gathered herself and saw Yaz give Dan a squeeze. Sorry, Dan, Yaz said. The doctor decided to give him a scrunch, and she cocked her head. Sorry, Dan, but hey, the gang's all here. Yaz was nodding. Unbeatable, she said. Right, yeah, unstoppable us, Dan added with a grin. So let's end this, said the doctor. You've got a plan. You know what's going on. Can we get out of this place? Maybe. I think so, and probably, the doctor answered. In fact, I'm not sure we actually are in a place, quotation fingers, as such. More likely we're all fast asleep in the TARDIS. Did you just say quotation fingers? Asked Yaz. So, all we have to do is, what? Wake ourselves up, said Dan. Little bit more to it than that. I mean, there are tangential dimensions of the universe which have just as much reality as the physical universe, even if you're not physically present. But, in essence, probably, yes, we just need to wake up. Oh! Without warning, the plan suddenly struck her, formed completely all at once, all variables considered, all probabilities of success and failure intuitively mapped out. Sort of. Bit of guesswork and a lot of assumption. But she was sure it was going to work. Scrap that. She was half sure it might work. At least some of it might work. However, time was against them. Best not to mention how experiences in these tangential dimensions could affect them in reality. For now, the guys were both smiling. Dan, where's Cavanister now? She asked. I've no idea. He was right behind me, but... He left it hanging, and the doctor realised he was staring right at her. She smiled. No. What? Said Yaz. No, said Dan. No way. What? I don't... She wants me to lure him in. Right. Good idea. How is that a good idea? I'm not a guinea pig. The only way to get out of this, said the doctor, is to face our fears and atone for whatever they represent. She looked at Dan. She looked at Yaz. All of us, including me, we all have to lure them back in. We're all going to have to be guinea pigs. I know my fears pretty well, thanks, said Dan. There's no need for me to go running up to them waving a big red flag. Come on, Flopsy. Yaz took his arm. We're unbeatable, right? Isn't that what you said? I said unstoppable. You're the one who said unbeatable. I was lucky to get away with me life. Exactly, said the doctor. She turned to Yaz. And you were thrown into a mob of weeping angels. By rights, you should never have been able to escape that, but you did. Because that's what happens in dreams and nightmares, right? No matter how scared we get, how terrifying the monsters under the bed, we always make a miraculous escape. We always face them down, and we always wake up. And you always win, grinned Yaz. Exactly, the doctor threw her arms wide. That's my job. I always defeat the monsters. She smiled, hoping she sounded convincing. Walking through a dark kitchen, some floors below where they'd figured out the doctor's plan, quotation fingers, Dan whistled. At least he was trying to. Most of it came out. But Paul, John, Ringo and George wouldn't have been impressed by his rendition of help. Truth was, he was terrified of running into the beast whose attention he was attempting to attract. And his lips, like the rest of his body, were rigid and quivering. Here, doggy. He gave the whistling a rest for a minute. I've got treats. He didn't, but it would wind the old dog up no end. At least, it would have wound up the real Carvanista. This thing was likely to fly at him with nothing but teeth and claws. As far as it was concerned, Dan's meat and bones was the actual doggy treat. He shuddered involuntarily. And why did I think that? To cheer himself up, Dan pondered on how the real Carvanista would react, assuming he survived to tell him about this escapade.
I was a what? What the X, a werewolf? Why would I want to eat you anyway? You're nothing but fat and gristle. And what do you take me for? Would you eat your budgie?
Idiot. Dan froze, stared. At the far end of the kitchen, a shadow moved across a long stainless steel worktop, though it could have been a trick of the light, such as it was. The only light here came from half a dozen UV fly zappers arranged at intervals high on the walls. One of them popped right now as some hapless winged insect flew into it, and it made him jump. It made something else jump too. A savage roar burst from the darkness, and something jumped onto the worktop, causing it to buckle like a cheap plastic kid's toy. A flash of movement as the werewolf lashed out with a powerful arm and smashed the offending fly zapper from the wall. Dan heard it clatter into a million pieces. That could be my head next, he thought to himself, choking with absolute fear. As well as the thump and thud of his heartbeat, he could hear the unmistakable sound of padded footsteps stalking him. Face your fear, the doctor had told him. Fear exists only in the mind. It can't hurt you. Face it. Understand why it exists and hold yourself up against it. It'll be something personal, she'd said. So find that connection and make it right. Make it safe. Here goes. I've been looking for you. The beast turned. Dan heard it sniff and snort, a sound like a pair of battered giant bellows. You're surprisingly good at hide and seek, he added. Carvanista's mutated form jumped down from the worktop and Dan heard it striding towards him. The tiny voice in his head, which had asked him what the hell he was doing, was already running, screaming away from here. But if the doctor was right, Dan had to stay. So he planted his feet firmly on the floor and faced the beast as its horrific bulk and vicious snarling snout took form above and before him, padding slowly forward on 4 powerful legs in the cold black light of the remaining UV fly zappers buzzing with their combined electrical hum. I don't think you're going to eat me, Dan said. My friend wouldn't eat me. 'Cause that's what you are, mate. You might pretend to eat me guts, but I know it goes both ways, Carvanista. If you can hear me. The beast lowered its face. That's right. That's it. Okay now. Okay. Gently does it. The fear, which had been kneeling red until now, dialed down to amber as the creature ambled towards him, head down like a dog that knew it had done something wrong. It growled, but it was a sound far less terrifying than before. It was apologetic, whining. It was sorry. Slowly, locking onto its sad, dark eyes with his own, Dan walked forward, hands outstretched wide. There you go. There you go. He was within touching distance. He reached out a hand. The beast lifted its lips and growled hard, saliva dripping. He could take his hand off with one bite. Hey, don't be like that now. Come on, mate. It's all right. It's over. It's all over now. All right. It's all over now. There you go. There was a whine. The werewolf licked its lips with a long tongue and whined again. Dan placed his hand behind one of its cruelly misshapen ears and began scratching. He was still standing, but Carvanista had hunkered down, still licking his lips, now starting to pant, his breathing finding its rhythm. Dan breathed a sigh of relief and continued scratching behind the thing's ears. I've no clue what's going on, he admitted, and I don't know whether you're just luring me into a false sense of security, but if the doctor's right, I want you to understand. I don't blame you for what happened. You didn't cause my life to be a mess, constantly running from aliens and monsters. It's been a decent distraction from the actual real problems. I can see that now. It doesn't make it any easier to accept, but I'll work on it. He let out a sigh, closing his eyes while he spoke, and the two of them pressed their foreheads together. Dan felt the creature's wet tongue lapping at his neck. It wasn't unpleasant. In fact, he found that the only thing he was fighting were his own tears. You might have barged into my house and kidnapped me from my kitchen. Dan laughed, wiping his tears. But you showed me that the world, that the universe, is a lot bigger than one street in Liverpool. I thought that by embracing that side of life, it'd give mine some sort of purpose. I thought, this is what I've been waiting for. And it's been great, scary, terrifying, but I've seen so many wonders and made so many friends. I've climbed mountains to the stars and walked on moons 1 billion miles away, but I've never faced the reality of what I walked away from. So my fear is that when this ends, I won't have nothing to go back to. And that's something I've got to take on board and do something about. I haven't even told Yaz this. I don't think I've even admitted it to myself, to be frank, so consider yourself lucky, because I don't normally open up like this. The licking around his throat was getting quite intense now, tickling yet reassuring. The tongue moved up to his face, and a great wet slurp covered Dan's mouth and nose in thick drool. Stop it, you old softy. The real you's going to be dead embarrassed when I tell him about this. Don't blink. Yaz clamped her eyes shut, gambling that going against the standard Weeping Angel survival guide was the only way to be reunited, with the things she'd been trying to avoid. Without the doctor for support, everything was so quiet. Terrifying isolation and darkness defined her world. The angel arrived. Somehow Yaz could sense it. A thing which may or may not be was suddenly an immutable certainty, locked into tangible existence. Her fate at its hands, however, was still a flux of wavering probabilities, one of which had yet to win out. She opened her eyes and looked into the stony face of the angel doctor. It was close, maybe just beyond arm's length, and its face was uncovered. It was expressionless, devoid of personality, a mere representation of someone, nor was it perfect. It resembled the doctor, but the more Yaz looked, the more the doctor's warm, familiar features appeared absent. The more she looked, the more she hunted for visible flaws, the more fragile seemed the certainty of the angel's existence. I don't know if you can hear me, Yaz began. It probably doesn't matter. At the end of the day, this is for me to hear, not you. But as you are here, you're going to listen. Naturally, since Yaz stoically wasn't blinking, the angel did not move. I'm terrified of you, Yaz confessed, both physically and conceptually. I don't think I've ever been as scared as when those angels snatched me away in Mediton. It wasn't because I was stuck in the past. That didn't scare me at all. That was just a mystery to be solved. It wasn't even because I was worried about mixing Dan up in all this and Jericho too. No. The thing that actually scared me back then was that I might spend the rest of my life living those years without the doctor. I was forced to watch as she became the very thing that had separated us. I couldn't help her. All I could do was watch, and I remember that last look she gave me. It was the only time I'd ever seen the doctor so powerless. That was terrifying enough. But then you snatched her away. My friend. My hope. As she spoke, Yaz balled her hand into a fist and dug her fingernails into her palm, a painful reminder to keep her eyes open. I've been dependent on the doctor. Since we first met, I've tried to be more like her because she's so inspiring, so dazzling and brilliant. I thought if she ever left me alone, it'd be like taking the sun out of the sky. And that's exactly what you did. But you know what? I survived that long night. Being without her forced me to find my own way, and in doing that I found myself. I ached to see her again. Every day, every night during those years we were apart. But the distance you forced on us, it made me stronger. You made me stronger. The impassive face of the angel was unnerving. It gave her nothing, no reaction. But of course it wouldn't react as long as she held it in her gaze. It could only attack, and only then if she closed her eyes. People closed their eyes when they wanted to hide. I've done hiding myself away, Yaz said, taking a step closer to the angel. I'm done running away from me. I'm finished wanting to be someone else. I'm more comfortable in my skin. I'm happier being me, more than I ever was, because of the doctor and because of you. The uncertainty I'd always felt about who I was and about who I wanted to be, that's all gone. Like you, when someone looks at you, you become solid and real. That's where I am right now. I would give the doctor all of me if she wants that. And I'd be the happiest woman in the universe if she spent just a fraction of her life with me, watching as I grew old in her company. But I don't need the doctor's eyes on me to make me real. And as much as I want it, I can't spend my life hoping, wavering between uncertain futures. Yaz smiled. So how about you go back to where you came from? How about you go back to the past where you belong? Back to the old me, because you have no power here. With that, Yaz stretched out her arm. She laced her fingers around the cold throat of the angel, and then she resolutely squeezed her eyes shut. I know what you're doing, Doctor. The doctor coughed in the wake of the Dream Lord's sudden appearance. Oh, puff of smoke? Really? His face emerged through the fiery cloud, a mask of anger. It won't work, he snapped. You have a weakness that has followed you throughout all your lives, and I'm here to exploit it. Yeah, I know. Jelly babies, jammy dodgers, custard creams. I love a sugary treat. Can't help myself. Always sidestepping with frivolity, Doctor. Never facing up to your mistakes. The doctor turned on her heel, spotting the thing which lurked within the unsettling angles of the entrance hall. It was the putrefied version of Yaz, standing frozen yet upright in the shadow of the archway framing the giant wooden door and its complicated lock. Maybe I can change, the Time Lord whispered, standing in front of the corpse. Surface detail only, Doctor. You can change your appearance, but your hearts will remain true to your fatal flaws. The doctor ran a hand across the cheek of her companion. Fingers trembling, she made sure Yaz's eyes were closed one last time. Everything comes to an end. Then she spun to face the Dream Lord, still wreathed by coils of angry red smoke. You're wrong, you know. Yasmin Khan could never be a mistake. Not in my eyes. Oh, really? But do you see what stands in front of you? That's what she'll become. A poor reward for someone so devoted to you. Oh, I'm devastated, the doctor said. But if Yaz wasn't so special, it wouldn't hurt so much to lose her. And I'm so lucky to know someone so special. You come from a world of dreams, a place of infinite hope and inspiration, but you've been sucked in by nightmares, lured by monsters you can't defeat. Me? I've been fighting nightmares for most of my life, and I still dare to dream. Turning back to the corpse, the doctor stood upright. Death comes to us all, she said. And you're right, it is a poor reward. To have everything end one day, but what matters is what endures. And if your spirit, if your soul, if the memory of you and what you stood for and what you did in life endures and changes people, events, ideas, if you inspire just one person in your life, then it's worth every moment of pain and sorrow and hardship. The corpse started to fade, melting into the shadows. The doctor could hear the Dream Lord raging thunderously behind her, and as she looked at the giant wooden door leading out, she saw that the lock wasn't complicated at all. It was actually really simple, as most things usually were once you saw them clearly. There's no place like home, she whispered. She turned to face her demon one last time. You can't escape this, you know, she said. If you really wanted to, you could leave your prison right now. All it takes is a clarity of vision, a will strong enough to face what you're most afraid of, and maybe just a dash of hope, which you gave me by showing me Yaz, the one person for whom it's worth fighting the nightmares. The Dream Lord raged in his cloud of smoke. His face was monstrous, filling the hallway. You can't do this, Doctor! You can't just walk away! As good as they are, as powerful as they might be, dreams and nightmares are no substitute for getting on with what's real. They can inspire you, and they can terrify you, but they will only ever come true by your actions in the real world, for better or worse. Stay here, and you will achieve nothing. It's just smoke and mirrors, Dream Lord, Lord of nothing. And with that, the doctor grasped the giant wooden door, flipped the lock, and pulled to open. The doctor lay on the floor of the TARDIS, looking up at the golden crystalline pillars that towered into the dim reaches of the console room. A pair of groans sounded next to her, and she sat bolt upright, desperate to be the first to her feet because it would impress her companions. The Dream Lord was wrong. If the doctor had a weakness, it was her constant need to impress. Still, it was something she was very good at. Up you get, she said, springing to her feet. It actually worked, Dan exclaimed. He stayed on the floor. The doctor smiled at Yaz and stretched a hand out for her. You okay? Yaz nodded. She took the doctor's hand, and when she was upright, she moved to hug her. Seeing the move, the doctor skipped to the console before she could do so, another weakness. You sound surprised, Dan. Oh, you never saw what I was dealing with. I'm sure you'll be banging on about it. I'm never going to be able to look Calvin Easter in the eye again. Doctor, Yaz was following her around the console. Do I need to ask the obvious? If you don't, I will. Dan was on his feet at last, rubbing his bed head into shape. What the blazes was all that about? The doctor grinned, sensing another moment to impress. She couldn't help herself. Don't you remember what we were doing before it all kicked off? The Halloween party at Persephone Station. She reached under the console to retrieve a bright orange plastic pumpkin fitted with a black handle. Inside it was an assortment of sweets. The doctor took one out and scanned it with the sonic, frowning at the results it came up with. The sweets were spiked, said Yaz. Psychohallucinogens, the doctor confirmed. Explains everything. Dan joined them and poked a finger through the sweets. It really doesn't. You better not touch those, Dan, said Yaz. Might be on the wrapper. Dan snatched his hand back, and Yaz grinned. That's just mad, she said. Eat a sweet and you get to experience your worst nightmares firsthand. Dan wasn't impressed. Takes trick or treating to a whole new level. They must take Halloween very seriously on Persephone Station, added the doctor. Well, it'd make festivities more interesting than watching Saturn's weather, I guess. So, Calvin Easter's not really a werewolf. Were we ever really in danger? Yaz wondered. The doctor shrugged. If it were just your standard human nightmares, then probably not. She caught Yaz's concerned glance. The Dream Lord, is he real? Like everything else, Yaz, just a figment of my imagination. Yaz didn't take her eyes off the doctor's face. You want to talk about it? She said. Nope. The doctor was already flicking a range of switches, preparing the TARDIS for another adventure. It's still Halloween somewhere. Who's up for some more trick-or-treating? She received two matching, dubious looks. What? She grinned. Too scared. The Lord of Nightmares by Matthew Holmes. Edited and performed by Paul Laville. Sound effects by Jeff Cockwell.